It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman, and this show is brought to you by emailrevealer.com. You can go to emailrevealer.com and get a copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. Get an autographed copy. Otherwise, you can just get a copy of the book at Amazon.com. But also at emailrevealer.com, we can locate lost loved ones, old friends, deadbeats. We can help you with child support. If you need to locate someone's place of employment in order to get a child support enforcement, we can do asset searches, property locates, all different kinds of services over at emailrevealer.com. Today's show, we have our guest today is Matt Demille. And we're going to be covering a variety of topics. Matt has his own YouTube channel, which you can find just by Googling, searching his name on YouTube, Matt Demille, Demille, just like Cecil B. DeMille. And we're going to be discussing a lot of varied topics that I think fit in with our audience interest, mostly touching on the Hollywood occult. Okay? I found Matt because we were discussing that old situation with Corey Feldman and Corey Haim. And his name was presented to me as a guy who knows what's going on in Hollywood. So, Matt, are you there?
I am here.
Thank you so much, brother. Tell us about yourself. Who is Matt Demille?
Well, first, thanks for having me. My story is a strange one, perhaps too strange for most, but I'll try and keep it in the parameters of the provable and the objective. I was born in 1974 and had a pretty normal childhood on the surface, although underneath it was pretty weird, pretty bizarre. Lots of paranormal incidents of a variety. I can go into many subjects. I expressed myself through a lot of creation, including role-playing games and novels and ultimately movies. One led to the other, but they all had a consistency amongst them. I was sort of channeling things or picking up on things. And I was always into conspiracy as well. And all this came to a head when back in 2008, I moved down to Hollywood and got into the film business. I had been in the independents, and then I went to the AFI, the American Film Institute. And that's when synchronicity overload happened and a bunch of paranormal things happened. And I stumbled into the occult. I thought I was conspiracy savvy, you know. I had read the, Ufology 101 in the 90s, but nothing prepares you for the evil that is in Hollywood. You go in there a fan, you go in there a professional. As I'm sure your audience can appreciate, the truth is stranger and darker than fiction.
Okay, well, okay, I can't wait to hear this. But give us an idea. Now, you live in the Northwest now, right? Are you married? Do you work? What do you do?
Right now, I left Hollywood 5 years ago, and that was for a variety of pretty dramatic reasons. In the process, I broke from my fiance. The short story there is she got frightened off by everything we were dealing with. And I came home at the time not quite knowing what to make of the whole situation, what just happened. The whole paranormal occult caboodle down there, just my head was swimming, like, what do I do now with life? And I gave myself over to research. It's like, okay, I'm going to find out, I'm going to find the bottom of this rabbit hole. And I've been on that trail ever since. For work, I have my old game company that supplements a little bit. It sells online games. I've really just kind of been a hermit where I've devoted myself to the research, to catching up on the conspiracy that I had missed while being so wrapped up in trying to get my life going. I come back from Hollywood and I'm like, okay, what's going on? Then I start really learning about, say, 9/11 or the Bohemian Grove and these things. I'm like, oh, that fills in a few blanks. And I've taken on a number of projects since, writing projects. I really just kind of get by, not after money, not after fame or fortune, any of those lower consciousness pursuits anymore. I'm really just after the truth. So that's mostly what I do, in a variety of ways, including speaking out when invited.
Okay, now you said that growing up as a child, you had like paranormal experiences. Give me an idea what you're talking about.
Oh, wow. I saw a number of entities at various ages, not alien abductions. Those are a different thing, but I saw what I have called through my life in various forms interdimensional. I just saw some entities of some sort. And I have lengthy, detailed accounts of what happened on my YouTube site. But at age 3, I saw one, and then twice more around age 5, and then around age 9 at different houses. And the one at age 9 is very bizarre because it ties to the Montauk project in a number of ways. It was 1983. And we'll get into Stranger Things type of territory there. That was kind of my life. I had a lot of electrokinesis, a lot of glass and light bulbs and things would blow up around me. Just shatter. Electronics would fail around me. And my parents have a past going back. Now, this will sound out there, but shall we say shadow people have followed them for some time, both military families. And Tacoma is quite a hot spot for the paranormal. I mean, ufology got started here. The MIBs first showed up here in 47. Same year my parents were born. Coincidentally. Mount Rainier, Murray Island, all these military bases and things. A lot of energy concentrated here. And as a child, I wasn't really into the normal things like sports or, the popular things. I was off drawing pictures or starting the foundations of what would become my later work of creative, books and things, but I was always channeling things that ended up being real, which was odd. Some rituals that turned out later to be real in Hollywood, like I saw them coming. I would get entities right. I would change it. No, this is not right. This is how it really is. I got into sacred geometry and crystals and all that decades ago. I just sensed it. It was like, this is what it is. This is what's important. Mashed potatoes, I call it. Close encounters. This, you just have it in your head.
Okay, now a couple of things. Now, when you were growing up as a kid, your parents were raising you. Were you brought up in a church or a synagogue or any kind of faith?
Very loosely Christian. My mom had a pretty bad, rough childhood, and she liked to. Her mother died when she was very young, so she had the more spiritual side, and we went to church a few times, a few Sunday schools early on, but like a lot of people, it just didn't stick. But I never really had anything chosen for me. My parents didn't say try out for Little League or this, that, including religion. It was just they waited till I found whatever I was going to find. In my teens, I tried going back to church for a while. I even had an experience, a little story. I was in England in 96 when I was 22, went to the White Cliffs in the little chapel there at the Castle of Dover. Had a kind of an experience, just like I can't stray too much into the darkness. I got to stay in the light. Not overly Christian. I was just trying to be worldly, more Indiana Jones, see all cultures, try and find the commonalities of, all histories. But I lean towards Christian values. I just, that's what is in our culture. But as I got into my 20s, I started getting much more into the UFO paradigm. And now it's all over the place because, Hollywood opens up that Pandora's box. Now, I can't say I don't know if this will offend people, but I've had a lot of bad experiences with Christians over the years. It's made it hard for me to take that side. So I'm just kind of a rogue element out there. I have my own beliefs and
going rogue like Sarah Palin, right?
I don't actually. I've never watched her too much. I never watched politics until the last year.
Well, now you said you traveled to England and you were sort of like an Indiana Jones type. How were you funding that?
Oh, that was just a one-time thing. We had a bunch of friends who were paying for the flat. They're like, all you need to do is pay for airfare. And I'm like, well, we can scrounge that up. So I got to go to the haunted spots, took the Ripper tour, bumped my head on the Bloody Tower, left my blood on the Bloody Tower. That was fun. Went to Loch Ness, the usual haunted spots you got to see. Didn't care about Buckingham.
Which is probably more haunted than all of them. Now,
it could be. It's too crowded. Yeah. There's less people in Highgate Cemetery,
Now, when you mention shadow people, are you describing the phenomenon you see out of the corner of your eye?
I use the term shadow people just as a catch-all. It's the phenomenon's happening so fast these days. It's hard to keep up with it. The shadow people. Yeah, roughly, but I'm not sure where they end and other dark entities begin, like the Mibs or the Hat Man, or as I wrote them throughout my life, phantoms, I called them, these silhouettes of these dark entities. I've been writing about them since 1991. There's these dark forces that I have had some encounters. Long story, they've interfered in ways that, like, when things would start to go wrong in my life, they would be there. And when you stopped snooping and you stopped prying too deep, they'd leave you alone.
Now, a lot of times when you hear people discussing shadow people, it's associated with the use of methamphetamine, right?
I've not heard that.
Oh, yeah, you haven't heard that? No, it's a big thing. People addicted to meth, they all see the shadow people. Now, and they talk about it a lot. But now, how about you? Any experience with drug addiction or anything like that throughout your life?
Actually, the opposite. I was more of a Joe Friday. I have never touched any drug, cigarette, or coffee really in my life, pretty purely, except for cannabis, but that's a recent thing. I did not touch alcohol until I was 32 years old. And I have to date never smoked a cigarette or a cigar or anything. I've never taken any street drug, and I've only had coffee 3 times. My only vices are beer and cannabis. And I found those, years after I started writing about all this stuff.
Right. Yeah, myself, I've just been on this 66-day Daniel fast. I just had my first cup of coffee today and my first drink of alcohol last night. So I'm a little hungover, actually. But it definitely feels better when you don't. Now, how did you wind up going? What you grew up in Washington, you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Tacoma.
And then you went to Hollywood. What were you doing before, as a career, before you went to Hollywood?
Oh, my games and books and things, the old self-marketing, raising money, going to conventions, doing your booth, hawking your products, all that fun, going nowhere, going in circles in your early 20s, just trying to figure out, does my life's work have legs? Not in the commercial market, but that's okay. You have to try. And that led me to cross marketing into movies, because the independent movies I got into were about games, and so I could promote. They sucked me into being their art department, because I always had a hobby for building lots of Halloween displays and things. And then apparently I had such a knack for it. A few years after that, I ended up down at AFI and on the movie lots. It just happened very fast.
And with the video game, these are like video games. You were like a video game programmer?
Role-playing games, more Dungeons and Dragons type stuff. Books, one-man operation. Now, video games, I liked them, but I'm not a programmer.
What is that called? Rolping or LARPing? LARP. Live-action role-play.
LARPing is live-action role-playing, right, which I was never involved in. I did things like Renaissance fairs like most people. I, got my costume. My parents did a costuming business for SCA and things like that for a number of years. So I like theatrics, but I don't live those things. I don't LARP. I designed like the tabletop, the dice. Like in the, have you seen the Netflix show Stranger Things?
No.
Oh, you should. It's a great show. Very retro, 1983. It's a wonderful show. It's 8 episodes of good at Halloween time, especially good in October to watch. But they're playing Dungeons and Dragons. It's just dice and miniatures and maps and books and lots of paraphernalia you can self create and self market.
Did you ever live in New York?
No, I've never been, but I want to.
Okay. I don't know about that because I actually
it's a nice place to visit, but
it's a nice place to visit. But I actually met a guy in New York years ago. In fact, he had an office in the World Trade Center before, and he designed those board games. I was wondering if maybe you remind me a little bit of him.
No, I've never been there. I'm sorry about. Odd story, just one of those things that occurs to me. I never think to tell it, but in AFI in class, some of the mentors I had who were A-listers, above the line people, they talked about how a lot of them were informed not to fly that day.
Oh, really?
Some people in Hollywood got the inside track to stay grounded that day. People knew that was going to happen.
And where did you hear that?
I heard it in class. I won't say the name, but I'll say the movie he was associated with was the Ring, the ghost movie The Ring from back in the day. He was location scouting, so it was art department. He was coming in to guest teach in my drafting class, and he told us that he was going to be on one of the planes, and he was called and told not to. So who in Hollywood has that kind of foreknowledge? Well, it filters down at least to the art department level, so that's a lot of people. That's not very exclusive. Just a little side note. I haven't thought about that in years. I've never been to New York. The Montauk Project's a weird thing there. My ties to it are different than the average Montauk survivor. Just putting that out there in case anyone's wondering, since it's it's Long Island.
Well, give us an idea. Now, what was your experience in Hollywood?
Started at AFI, which is a 2-year master's program, and it's often considered to be the Juilliard or the Harvard of film schools. It gives you the golden pass to everything, and what they didn't realize was that I dressed like Indiana Jones. I actually wore my hat and jacket around in class and things. I made it my Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade was my thesis project, a re-envisioning of the film and its occult symbolism, because I know what Sean Connery said when he said illumination. Yeah, Sean Connery's in the club, so are a lot of them. But I was snooping around. I wasn't just learning to make movies. I was given access to the backlots and could go anywhere I want, I looked around. I wanted to see anything I could find. And then I found some things I shouldn't have. So I didn't last long in the business. You're not going to work in this town again, kid, happened pretty quick. And I was offered many times the proverbial, I won't say, I was given the offers for one sin or another to give them blackmail material or whatever. The parties, the temptations, the bribes. Joe Friday said no.
Well, give us an idea. What did you stumble on in the backlots?
Oh God, that's such a broad question. There's so many things. It's like an amusement park at the Strange. The way there's mundane things. It's just interesting, like the way they use the western town for storage. You go inside the New York set, and there's like a room full of coffins and just neat stuff like that. But it's I'll give you one example. This is a good story. When the new Universal backlot was opened, it had burned down and then was rebuilt. We got to go to the grand opening of that. And so I walked around and I found, I was talking to people like, I was kind of in the shallow conspiracy mode of, was this just an insurance scam or something like that?
Right.
And what I heard more to the point was it needed ritual rebuilding. I didn't understand, and that's not a term they use, that's my term. But I walked around Hill Valley, the clock tower, Back to the Future, and all that. I'm just standing around there, looking around. I'm talking to people that helped design it. They were some of my teachers, some of the draftsmen and women, and they were just talking about how like we needed to cleanse it, or it needed to be. They talk out of the side of their mouth a lot. They're always testing to see what you know. And I didn't know the right words, so they didn't tell me much more. But it was a lot of things in movies are ritual, especially Back to the Future. Does your audience know much about that one in the Hill Valley Clock Tower?
Yeah, a lot of people familiar with that, yeah.
Yeah, the whole 9/11 and all. Yeah, they were confirming that sort of thing to me, but I didn't understand what they were saying at the time. So they design these things it's not just they found when they design sets or they redesign things nowadays, they have that occult purpose built in. I mean, they just, they know what they're doing. It's not accidental. They find a part of the backlot that works for this or that. They make it work.
You know what? Maybe we got ahead of ourselves. Why don't you describe to people what the theory is of Back to the Future and 9/11?
Oh, well, there's a lot of different parts of it, but there's a lot of symbolism worked into Back to the Future that when you look at it, it can't be coincidence, and it more or less predicts 9/11, tells us it's going to happen in a time travel movie of all things. And there's other occult ritual, because 9/11 is a cult ritual. I don't know how your audience will feel about this, but it wasn't, Bin Laden, it was the deep occult from always. And these are universal symbols in the occult, like the two towers, and so on. And then is your audience familiar with the connection between Doc Brown essentially being Zeus or Werner von Braun, and then Marty being Hades, and the enchantment of the sea dance being Poseidon, the three Greek gods defeating Kronos, the clock tower, death?
I've never heard that in particular, but just so you know, my producer William Ramsey wrote the book 9/11 as an occult ritual. Yeah, so are you familiar with his work, William Ramsey?
I can't say that I am. Sorry, there's so many people out there to know, but I'm definitely going to crack a new book now.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, yeah, he just wrote a book on Crowley too. Very good stuff.
I could talk a lot about Crowley.
Okay. Well, he seems to fit into everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I literally walked in his footsteps out to the Arroyo Socorro underneath JPL and had a paranormal experience there, the Devil's Gate. But Back to the Future, one of my thesis mentors, who I had regular meetings with, was Neil Canton, one of the three people in charge of Back to the Future, one of the producers. That's how close I was to that movie in many ways, and I can confirm, I can't say how with him, but I can confirm because of him. I can't believe I'm name dropping there. I'm sorry, I'm a little scared at the moment. But nothing to say bad about him, but people around him. Back to the Future was 9/11. I'm sorry, I got off track. Everyone knows the movie, so I'll just go into a few scenes. When Marty shows up in the beginning, before he goes back in time, he's at the Twin Pines Mall. Twin pineal gland, Twin Towers. He shows up at 1:15 and it clicks to 1:16. Upside down, as everything evil and inverted is. Turn that image upside down. 1:16 is 9/11. And what happens? The terrorists show up. So, and then when Marty goes back to the future at the end of the movie, the blazing fire trail, when he almost crashes into the Assembly of Christ theater there next to the clock tower, on the building to the left is the arrow of Sagittarius, a big 9, and then the flaming trail is the 11. And as the art department, I talked to that 9 was not an accidental placement of the set dressing. Those things are not accidents. That neon sign had to be rented, placed, fit into the design, and art department was that was my class. So I talked to the people, yes, that was deliberate placement. So 9/11 was known in 1985. Someone knew to put it there.
So now, when you were walking around this Universal Studios, and they were talking about they had to rebuild it because for an occult significance, were you already tuned into what they were talking about and suspicious, or was this like a shock to you?
It didn't register. Again, I had an arrogance that I had read, like I said, the basic UFO stuff. So I knew about Roswell and I knew about Area 51, and I thought I was smart. I didn't pick up on half the stuff they were telling me at the time, and maybe I'm glad I didn't, because knowing me, I would have opened my big mouth and gotten in trouble, and I would have pushed it too far. They were testing me to see what I knew. You know, I didn't know any of the secret handshakes or anything. I was a liability. I didn't know enough, so they didn't let me in. Okay. I think.
Okay, so then what was like your next experience?
Well, I mentioned Crowley. I guess I should talk about that. Or did you mean experience with the backlot? Or
with the backlot?
Let's see. Well, let's see. There's many backlots: Universal, Sony, Warner.
Well, let me ask you a question. Now, when you said that they had these coffins in the western town, were these real coffins or were these coffins for movies?
Both. They just keep a collection of them there. It's like it's like 2 or 3 stories of just like hundreds of coffins stacked up in. They use the backlot for storage, which is a good use of space. You know, the facades of buildings have all kinds of, you know, there's one full of chairs and school desks and things. Just interesting. And interesting people that haunt them, you know. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, yeah. What other examples can you give us of a occult influence in the movie industry?
Well, everyone knows now about MK Ultra, music industry, and all that, right? The whole programming goes way back to the 60s. With your audience knows about Laurel Canyon.
Sure.
Okay, and the Doors, Jim Morrison, Huxley, and all. They know that basic.
Yeah, just so you get an idea. Dave McGowan, you know, was a personal friend, and pretty much when he started coming on my show is when his whole career took off. I used to mention Dave McGowan when I was a guest on Coast to Coast and stuff like that. No one had even heard of him, and then he started doing my show, and that's really when everything took off for him. Right around that same time as the book got published and stuff. And yeah, I'm friends with his brothers and stuff, and you know, so.
I'm so sorry to hear about Dave. I read his book as well. I couldn't believe it when I read it. I'm sorry. So Occult.
Hey, did you ever read the one about the serial killers, Programmed to Kill?
No, I have not.
That's a good. Yeah, you got to take a look at that too. That gets into this whole thing too, about how all these serial killers also is involved in organized cults and satanic activity as well. And usually covered up and pinned on just one rogue, you know, mass serial killers. And if you notice, too, we don't even see these serial killers anymore. What happened to them? They don't exist anymore. Used to have these big famous ones, Son of Sam and Hillside Strangler and all these guys. They're all gone. But now we have these mass shootings in schools and these other kinds of mass
They've
events.
Changed the marketing.
Right.
The big has changed the marketing on us. The all 60s, that was that big experiment. Now they're experimenting a different way. I wonder if they're behind the clowns that are out there now. But occult examples. Where were we? I'm sorry.
Well, you know what? This might be a good time to take a break. Okay.
Oh yeah. Okay, we're on a half hour.
Yeah, we'll take a little commercial break. We're here with Matt Demille, Hollywood insider, and he's telling us all about his experiences with the occult in Hollywood and all different kinds of stuff. He has a website that covers all these kind of subjects, 9/11 and Montauk and all these different kind of stuff. We'll be back with more of Matt Demille after these messages. Okay, we are back with Matt Demille, Hollywood insider. Tells us all about occult activity in Hollywood. You can find him on his YouTube channel, which is Matt Demille, Demille. So, Matt, you were telling us about your experience on the backlots there with the where they filmed Back to the Future.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people are familiar with that. What other films can you tell us where you see them doing occultic type rituals or embedded into the film?
Just some titles off the top that have a commonality that I can talk about a lot would be Ghostbusters, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, The Pagemaster, Buckaroo Banzai, and Back to the Future itself. These all have to do with portals, stargates. People have a lot of terms for them now. Portals are a big deal in Hollywood. They go back to Crowley, and perhaps even one reason Hollywood was chosen as a location to build that industry of illusion. interdimensional gateways, demons, aliens, whatever you want to define them as. I mentioned the Devil's Gate. This, there's those movies I mentioned, they have a lot of, being in the art department, being a lifetime conspiracy guy, and then having some of the mentors be of the same films. Another of my mentors was John DeCure, the designer of Ghostbusters. So I talked to him about designing the very sets, like the top of the building in the finale of Ghostbusters when Gozer shows up.
Yeah.
How is it accomplished? With 2 towers, 2 obelisks, the Scarlet Woman, and then Gozer's portal itself is a perversion of the Lion's Gate, the Apollo Leon's Lion's Gate, and the pyramid with the Illuminati top. I mean, Gozer comes out of a pyramid with a glowing cap. And the same way that it's always about through a tunnel and these same symbols, the 11, the gate, like 9/11, the gate. The Scarlet Woman being, of course, out of Crowley, and all the same basket of lore, Hollywood lore.
When you're saying that it's like a portal, describe what you mean by that.
Well, I would say there literally are places in this world where the veil is thin and entities can come and go. I mean, people talk about where ley lines cross and you get vortices, but there are more significant portal zones, and there is one in Pasadena, the Devil's Gate I mentioned, and there are others around the world, and they worship them, these Illuminati types, and I use that term loosely. I don't want people to jump to conclusions about that. But they, at the end of the day, they're satanic, and they want dark entities to come through. And a lot of movies that we've grown up to love are sort of minor initiations, preparations. They're cultural assimilations. They're like I mentioned with the Doors in the 60s. We had Laurel Canyon and MK Ultra, and all that was a cultural experiment to see what they could do to control us with harmonics, with psychology, with all these things. And then nowadays we get Lego Stargate and all these things that make it friendly. It's not. It's real. And what comes through is not friendly.
Wait, there's something called Lego Stargate? What's that?
Lego Dimensions. And coincidentally, they released it on the very day I was going to be married. And it combined Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, and various other films, including Wizard of Oz, I forgot to mention that one, into the Stargate, which is another thing I've been channeling my whole life, this 8-pointed gate. I've 20-odd years I've been thinking about it, and now they made it and released it on the day I was going to be married, which was the blood moon, the quad blood moon. Chose that date 13 years in advance. No way I could have. It's just weird. Coincidences, I don't believe in coincidence. It's about shifting your matrix, shifting your dimension. That's why I called my game company New Dimension Games, and Lego makes Lego Dimensions about the same symbol I've been wearing and drawing and designing in my costumes and books for 25 years.
So when you say Lego, you're talking about Lego, those little toys that when you step on with your foot? Okay.
Click, 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 click.
Okay. Yeah, you know, whoever, you're right, because if you step on those with a bare foot, you know, you never forget it. So whoever designed those things has to be from the devil. Now, what about you mentioned Roger Rabbit, okay? Because I remember I had a girlfriend when that movie first came out, and she had 2 little kids, 3 and 5, and they were so obsessed with that. It was when videotapes were first coming out back in the 80s, and they were so obsessed with that. They must have watched that movie like 200, 300 times.
They weren't terrified of Judge Doom? Speaking of the shadow people,
honestly, I don't remember. I remember Jessica Rabbit because they used to say that my girlfriend reminded them of Jessica Rabbit. You know,
Jessica Rabbit's another Scarlet Woman.
Right. So
just the recurring ritual.
Well, give us an idea. Point out the themes to us.
Okay. Well, Roger Rabbit. I should point out that my apartment was the AFI campus is right underneath the Griffith Observatory, and my apartment was a block from there. So I basically lived underneath the shadow of the observatory. Griffith Observatory, which is right before you get to the observatory, there's a tunnel. The tunnel does not go to the observatory, but it's right underneath it. It goes through the mountain to the other side.
Okay.
That is the same tunnel you see in pretty much every movie, like Buckaroo Banzai, like Roger Rabbit, it's the doorway to Toontown, like Back to the Future when Marty tries to steal the almanac back from Biff in part 2. It's the same tunnel, and I'd go jogging through it all the time, so I got very familiar with it. There's a ritual very important to Hollywood types and the occult types about the tunnel, the portal of perception, the doors of perception, to talk about Morrison and Huxley and all that. The pineal gland, back to them pine trees of Back to the Future, Twin Pines Mall. So they put these recurring elements, and that tunnel of perception it's symbolic of going through the doors, opening up, and that's why when you enter Toontown, you go from the drab normal world to the colorful rainbow. The spectrum is open, just like when Dorothy goes from black and white Kansas to the color of Oz. She opens the door, and everything is in color. And Dozer comes through the door.
You're talking about Toontown at Disneyland?
No, Toontown in the movie. In the movie, when Eddie Valiant...
Oh, gotcha. I remember now. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, he chases Jessica Rabbit into Toontown thinking she's to blame for Maroon's death back at the studio. But what's symbolically going on there is the layman, the everyman, the uninitiated, is chasing the Scarlet Woman and Follow the White Rabbit, to talk about the Matrix and the rabbit hole. Another Neo, his passport expires on 9/11, everything, perception. And he goes through the tunnel of light into greater illumination. And that's same with the Page Master, who uses the same tunnel. And Christopher Lloyd is always showing up in these movies. He's Doc Brown, he's Judge Doom, he's in Buckaroo Banzai. He goes through that tunnel as an alien, driving a UN van with a pyramid on the side. And Page Master, Macaulay Culkin, goes through it to get to the Lionsgate library where Christopher Lloyd awaits to give him illumination when he stands on the 8-pointed Stargate and gets splashed with color. One of my mentors was John Muto, who designed Home Alone, so he told me all about Macaulay Culkin. He spent a lot of time with him. That's where I started to learn about the various mafias in Hollywood. Muto is a great guy. He told me straight.
Well, then what can you tell us about Macaulay Culkin?
Not much is not known in the public now about things, but no, not many people escape, as Corey Feldman said, the casting couch. Now, Muto and Culkin, Home Alone, that was a whole different thing. I don't think he was in there yet. He talked about how they'd just go roller skating through the set. But the people around him, the people Corey Feldman talks about, same, not the same exact producers sometimes, but the same clubs, the same people that hang out together. And I'd put, I know they weren't on that movie that I mentioned, Home Alone, but, I think referring to Feldman stuff.
Yeah.
Schumacher, Joel Schumacher, and I'd put him in the Pedo Club. I'd put, I hate to say it, but Reiner, Princess Bride Reiner, I think is in the club.
Rob Reiner or Carl Reiner?
I'm sorry, Carl. Did I say Rob?
No, you didn't. You just said Reiner, the last name.
Okay. I'm a little uneasy here.
Let me ask you a question. Are you familiar with the theory that Rob Reiner was at Altamont at the scene of that the murder of that the young black man by the Hells Angels?
No, but I have heard that George Lucas was the cameraman.
Yeah, and there's I spoke to a guy who told me he went frame by frame through that film, and he spotted Aquino in the audience, and also
Colonel Aquino.
Colonel Michael Aquino, and also Rob Reiner was there. And
Rob.
Yeah, Rob Reiner. Now what do you call it? Also, too, you've seen the movie, right? The Altamont movie?
I have not.
Oh, really?
I didn't even know they made a movie of it.
Oh, no, yeah.
I saw scraps of footage spliced into a documentary here and there, and I didn't even know they had made it.
Yeah, I meant the documentary, the long one. It was about the whole Stones, about what happened in Altamont. You got to find that. Now, there's a lot of interesting stuff. At the very beginning, one of the Stones is riding into town on a donkey dressed up as a Templar.
Huh.
Yeah, man. And then they stop off at that they recorded a song where supposedly that guy gave his life to the blues musician, gave his life to the devil, Crossroads, you know. they film in there too, in that little town. And what I found out, I just did an interview with a guy who just wrote a book about Altamont. I forget his name. But what's not shown in the movie, and what's not shown and discussed even before, the first time I ever heard about it, is that when they stabbed this guy and they killed this guy, the crowd picked him up and brought him to the stage and laid him on the altar of the stage there in front of Mick Jagger and the Stones, and they continued the concert.
I wouldn't be surprised. It makes perfect sense knowing the. Yeah, God, it's so disgusting, isn't it?
It's beyond belief, you know, because you see the movie, which is horrific enough, you know, and then the Stones did not want to give their helicopter to medevac this guy out of there to get help. The guy was there for like 90 minutes dying.
Kind of like Princess Diana couldn't get medevaced out of that tunnel by the 13th pillar in time.
Right.
90 minutes hanging around with the ambulance.
Yeah, I did a very long show on that, on Princess Diana, and there's no doubt that was a murder.
The Dove. Yeah. Wasn't that the site of an ancient temple to Diana? I mean, wasn't it? And Hollywood is no different. And the movies are that way. I mean, that's how they think. That's what they're imprinting on culture.
Yeah, there's a statue at that tunnel. It's some kind of an occultic statue. And then there's also an eternal flame, which seems to be another pattern, that they always have an eternal flame for one of these sacrifices that they do. Mm. Okay, but now...
Ghostbusters, Columbia, the Dove.
Right. And now, Macaulay Culkin, it's interesting, too, that in that film, Home Alone, Donald Trump shows up in that film.
He's in number 2.
Yeah. Okay, what do you make of that?
I don't know. Trump's such a sensitive subject. I don't know. Trump 1990, probably a little different than Trump 2016, but I don't know. He showed up in a movie. He did a cameo. I guess that was it. I don't know. I think Trump wanted to be an actor or a movie star, and that just wasn't his calling. Maybe he takes whatever anyone offers him a role in a movie. Maybe he'd take it. I don't know.
Do you know that right now he's a co-defendant in a child rape case along with convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein?
Oh, Epstein.
Yeah.
Has Trump been to Epstein Island?
Well, better than that, man. You know, Trump, there's a quote in New York Magazine by Vicky Ward when Epstein first came to light. Trump said that, oh, yeah, I've known Jeffrey Epstein for 15 years. He's a wonderful guy.
Yeah.
He likes beautiful women, many of them on the younger side. He sure likes to have his fun, blah, 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 you know. And then, you know, Epstein is his neighbor down there in Palm Beach. Their neighbors, Mar-a-Lago is right next to Epstein's mansion. Several of the girls that Epstein molested, that was convicted of molesting, worked at Mar-a-Lago. That's where he met them through Ghislaine Maxwell. That's where he procured these girls, working at at Mar-a-Lago down there. Prince Andrew and Epstein molested these girls at Mar-a-Lago. There's a photo at a tennis tournament down there of Trump, Epstein, and Prince Andrew. They called him Andrew York in the photo. They didn't call him Prince Andrew. So, yeah, the connections are mind-blowing between Trump. And he was on the plane, too.
Oh, I'm interested to see where that goes. On my YouTube, I do a couple of things on Trump. I'm generally on Trump's side, but only for one reason. I haven't seen the dirt on him yet. Maybe this is it. When he first showed up, I thought, for sure he's going to be a regular Bilderberg attendee or something, and then that didn't exist. So I'm like, I'll hold out judgment, but I won't be surprised if I don't let anything shock me anymore. I have no sacred cows anymore. But I got to wonder, though, just you can be so close to something and as a businessman say good things just because you don't want to ruffle any feathers, but you can be so close to something and not know it, too. I mean, I cite my own experience in Hollywood. I thought I knew everything, and I knew nothing. Does Trump know? I guess we're going to find out one way or the other very soon. He's going to have the screws put to him. If he's dirty, he's dirty. I've had to write off so many people, just finding the ugly truth. I just accept it. I just wonder why they're trying so hard to stop him. I mean, is he like going rogue? Maybe he's going to squeal on him.
Well, the thing is, if they're giving them $2 billion worth of free TV time, how much are they really trying to stop them?
I know, that's true. That's true.
Bernie, they tried to stop Bernie and it worked. You know what I mean?
Oh, they definitely were out to stop Bernie.
Yeah.
I felt bad. I had people that were, good friends that were did 12-hour delegate days for Bernie, and I'm like, Hillary's just going to rob him blind from it. And then coin toss after coin toss. I'm like, oh, what a lucky break for her, for the Bilderberg choice. And then I don't know. I guess at least unlike most mysteries or like UFOs or anything, we have a deadline. We're going to see what's going to happen in a few weeks one way or the other, and we don't have to wait years to find out, I hope.
You might want to look into Trump's connection, his mentor, Roy Cohen, and Detective Jim Rothstein, New York City detective, who investigated Roy Cohen as part of a child pedophile ring where 3 boys were murdered. And Jim Rothstein believes that those boys are buried on Roy Cohen's property. So, yeah.
I'll look into that. I do love to dig, and I love to find my dirt.
Yeah, a lot of good sources on it. Now, but you said that these pedophile clubs in Hollywood. Now, what kind of contact did you have with that? Or let's hear about that.
Well, I was offered outright to join what is called the gay mafia. That's their term, not mine. I was given a couple of offers from mentors, not the ones I've mentioned, but it had to do with a couple of different jobs, and basically if you don't get down on your knees, you're not going to get the job. And beyond that, it was, you watch for a year or so around the school, and when you go, you film as students, you film on the backlots, you film around town, you do real work. So you're around film professionals, and you watch who doesn't have a girlfriend or a wife, for long periods of time, and how they react to you watch a lot of films together, so you see a lot of their reactions, and you start to feel out who's who. And then when these people make offers to you, you can put 2 and 2 together. Like when they invite you to their house privately, it's not always to review an assignment. Tacoma was kind of a rough town. We had the old hilltop in the 90s and things. And my parents worked in emergency personnel. My father was a firefighter. My brother was an EMT. I had a lot of, exposure to the ugliness of life growing up. So when I was given these offers, I recognized them intuitively for what they were and said no. So I didn't barely but get my foot in the door, but things I did see, we worked with child actors on a number of films, and there are so many, they're teachers, they have to have essentially a teacher with them all day, and it's always a pain in the butt when you're trying to shoot. But they're always supposed to be with them all the time. They're not. They go off privately all the time. So you can see the trafficking going on right in front of you. But if you don't know what you're looking at, you don't recognize it. And there was at least one time I was told, look the other way. Literally, turn around, you didn't see anything.
All right.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I don't want to mention who or where that was, because don't want them to come looking for me. And I'm sorry I don't have more to say on that, but just take it from my short experience. It happens. Everything people talk about, when I heard Corey Feldman start coming out, I'm like, oh, good God, finally someone's going to say something. It made me sick. It makes me sick to think about it now. Yeah, so it's regular business. Same with drugs. People are doing stuff in front of you all over the place. There's no subtlety in Hollywood. And if you're not okay with that, they pick that out very quickly too. You're going to make trouble. No Joe Fridays allowed. So that's how it operates. Sorry to stay.
Now, what about you heard about these Hollywood sex tapes? What do you know about that?
The casting couch?
No, just like different stars, and then you hear that they were in a sex tape. Sometimes it becomes public.
Stars moonlighting, being escort services and then getting caught.
Oh, yeah,
Things like
Yeah, let's get into that one. Okay, let's like a lot of famous, and some of them even admit it. Like even Maureen McCormick from Marsha Brady from the Brady Bunch admitted being an escort. And you hear these stories because I know some of these escort services. A lot of these stars are available. What do you know about that?
Everyone is available for a price. I was shocked when I first got this film school. I'm like, oh boy, I get to meet stars one day. And I thought it would be years away. And they're talking about, no, you can get them on your student films. You can get anybody for anything. It's just a matter of price. Money talks, morals are non-existent. So I'm not sure how to go on this one. Just what specifically should I?
Well, okay, usually female celebrities, and also too that fly either to the Middle East or to Europe and appear in porn movies, privately recorded porn films. What do you know about that?
I know it happens, but I can't comment on experience. I didn't have much contact or anything with that. I did films about it, but that's just fiction. That's not really working with the people.
Okay. Have you heard the story about Ronald Reagan being in a gay porn film?
Nope.
Okay. Okay. It's out there. And supposedly Larry Flint had a copy of the film for many years. What about, have you heard this story about Jessica Simpson and Nick Lachey, that when they were filming that MTV show, that there were other hidden cameras there in the house that they were not aware of, and that there's all kinds of blackmail dirt that they're being blackmailed with?
I hadn't heard that specifically, but again, it doesn't surprise me because that's how they operate. They want to get dirt on anyone as quick as they can, as much as they can, because it's a business of blackmail. Anyone who's clean, they can't control. They don't want that. And your succession up the ladder is not about talent. It's about how you're willing to be compromised. No one's allowed near the top unless they're controlled. It's just like politics. I mean, but I can't cite specifics there. Not so much into the sex things, but more the occult things. And yeah.
So now you're saying that in the art department and the set design, that the people in these departments, they're aware of these occult rituals, and they design the sets accordingly.
Some are, yes. There are principles to go into the sets that have to do with sacred geometry and all those things that are not accidental. I mean, you can go back and look at the movies and you can see that there can't be coincidence. And having spoke to some of them, including a couple of the old timers from Kubrick's crew, people, room 237, not an accident.
And then what about that theory that has to do with the Apollo moon landing? What do you think about that?
Outright, that was staged. Kubrick, indeed, was initiated into the club. That legend is basically true. Like I said, I talked to a few of his old crew, and they, whatever their testimony's worth, Kubrick was involved. That basic story is true, that, we faked the moon landing because we didn't want to show what's really up there. And we've been there a lot earlier than 1967. NASA, never a straight answer. I mean, JPL came out of the occult, Jack Parsons and all that, Hubbard and Crowley. Kubrick made the deal with the devil, and Eyes Wide Shut, he tried to tell us, and they killed him.
Yeah, it's interesting that he was living on a property that actually had a moat around it. He was
a worried man.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. Then what was his cause of death? Do we know?
I don't know. I forget the official cause of death, but I'm pretty sure his cause of death was talking too much. Yeah. Too loud. He was going to make AI, and then Spielberg came in and talk about pedophilia. Spielberg came in and sugarcoated it, sanitized it.
Now, yeah, I've heard that the name Spielberg come up too with that topic. What can you tell us about that?
I used to love Spielberg, but he's in the big evil club. Sorry to say. He covers for things. He does whatever the propagandists tell him. And Spielberg, one of the main, he's been in the club since the beginning. Raiders of the Lost Ark, he said, was inspired by the man who would be king. which is why Sean Connery is the father of Indiana Jones, and that whole movie's about Freemasonry. I mean, Spielberg and Lucas being, of course, the cameramen at the stabbing. I mean, these two guys have known everything since the get-go. So the pedo club, Spielberg sure does have a lot to do with children, doesn't he, in all his movies? I used to think it was because he was Jewish, and that's the old kids and father thing. I'm tempted to quote George Carlin here, but said keep it clean.
Yeah.
About over love of children. I used to think that's all it was with Spielberg and kind of ruining his movies. Like, I didn't like it when you have too many. I liked being a kid, but as a kid, I liked to watch Indiana Jones, not Indiana Jones and Mutt. I want to see Indiana Jones beat people up. I don't want to see him take care of his family. I thought that's all it was. But as I've learned since, Spielberg, there's nothing he doesn't know about. What he participates in is different. He's more ritual, but he turns a blind eye to the child traffickers. Absolutely.
Now, you'd mentioned before you were aware of Michael Aquino. How does he fit into Hollywood and that kind of stuff? Does he?
Yeah. You probably know this already, but the Lucasfilm, the location of Lucas Industrial Light and Magic in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Same facilities where Aquino used to do all the dark summoning and trafficking of children, all the rituals and stuff. And I have to say, I've been to San Francisco only 3 times, and each time I've had like a curse befall me. That's a cursed town. There's a dark energy there. But there's so much of Star Wars that's occult. Lucas knows things, and if he got his start by being that cameraman, and Michael Aquino operating those buildings, I can't believe that there's no connection.
What you're talking about is at the Presidio base where Aquino was doing where these crimes were taking place. And by the way, those crimes were investigated by Rudy Giuliani.
Yeah.
Who gave it the clean bill of health there, saying there was nothing went on. Where do we find Giuliani today? With his buddy.
Hanging around with Trump. On Giuliani, I've wondered about something with him. I've wondered why Trump's keeping him close to him. I thought it was about 9/11 because Giuliani had to cover up for 9/11. I'm wondering if Trump means to expose that, if he can, and if Giuliani's going to be kind of like, he'll squeal on the bigger people, the bigger perps. I don't know. I didn't know he was connected to the Presidio there. Wow. It's a small world of evil, isn't it?
Yeah, sure is, yeah.
But Star Wars, sad to say, another big dark influence there, and look where Lucas comes from. Yeah. Michael Aquino, I mean, didn't he go on Oprah with his dark makeup, his satanic regalia on, and pretty much people see this and then they don't think anything of it. It's like, oh, it's okay.
Yeah, well, he walked around the army base like that, in full satanic outfit, you might want to call it,
I remember back in the 80s hearing about the satanic panic and people just like, oh, it's nothing, and that's what we all thought. Boy, were we fools, weren't we? We should have shut all this stuff down then. Of course, then the Hollywood propagandists step in. They made that movie, The Presidio. It's about one murder. Sean Connery again, just nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. A few thousand or million murders or something.
Now, that movie, The Presidio, was about the daycare center at the Presidio?
No, it was a complete whitewash. It was. I Netflixed it a few years ago because I'd never seen it, kind of hoping it would be that, and it was just one murder. Just one, and the whole thing with a big star like Sean Connery, and it was like a TV movie of the week plot. It was like this whole thing is just to redirect people. That's all it is. It's a cover. That's my opinion of that movie.
Okay, Matt, we're going to take another commercial break here. Okay, and this is going to be a real one. Okay, so when I play the commercials, like I said, it's 5 minutes long. You won't be able to hear the commercial, and also too, we can't talk during the commercial too. So
okay,
so we'll be right back. Yeah, we'll be right back after this with more of Matt Demille, Hollywood Insider, tells us all right after these messages. And now a word from our sponsors. Did you know that 30% of all people on online dating websites and personal ads are either married or in a monogamous relationship? 30%. If you suspect that your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend may be cheating online, go to emailrevealer.com, on our online infidelity investigation. You give us their email address, and we can trace it back to online personal ads, dating sites, and social networks. We can even expand the investigation and find them cheating on escort service sites, or even porn sites if they're registered to porn sites and swinger sites. So check out emailrevealer.com if you suspect your spouse is cheating, and check out our online infidelity investigation. William Ramsey is a producer here at the Opperman Report, and he's just come out with a new book, Children of the Beast, Aleister Crowley's Shadow Over Humanity. Now, he just sent me a copy of this book. Oh boy, it's about 2 inches thick, and there's a chapter on just about everybody in this book that you can imagine. The Beatles, and Jack Parsons, everybody's in here. It's incredible. And I definitely recommend this book. There's a bunch of pictures in here, too, of all these people and different chapters and information. Anton LaVey and people I've never heard of, too. There's a whole bunch in here. JFC Fuller. I don't know who he is. But it's great stuff by our producer here, William Ramsey. So check out Children of the Beast, Aleister Crowley's Shadow Over Humanity. You can find it on Amazon.com, or you could find it in the Opperman Report.com bookstore. We have an urgent bulletin. It seems that the group Strawman is still on the loose. It has been confirmed that Strawman are Canadian, okay, and that authorities are asking people to stay indoors, lock your doors and windows until this group can be dealt with. You could find more information about this group of Canadians, at strawmanmusic.com. You can have your ad played here. Okay, we're looking for sponsors. Okay, in fact, we desperately need sponsors right now to take this show to the next level. So you can have your ad played here, read live, like I'm doing now, so artfully. Or we can even work up a little jingle for you with some music and stuff like that and play it here. You have no idea how inexpensive it would be to have your ad played on the Opperman Report on 7 stations live Friday night, and another 7 stations live on Saturday night, plus replayed every day of the week on different stations, and then archived on YouTube, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and all different kinds of podcasts, Pod This and Podbean, all different kinds of places who archive the show for us. And on those archives, your ad would play indefinitely, forever. You also get a little banner on OppermanReport.com. You get a mention on the air. You get a little interview on the air, and all kinds of fun stuff if you sponsor Opperman Report. We have an opportunity to get this show on a major AM/FM station in California. We've been approved. So if you want to sponsor us into that, so incredibly inexpensive that your ad would be heard by a the range covers 5 million people in population, where your ad would be broadcast, and all these other stations would be thrown in for free. So really affordable prices to sponsor OppermanReport.com. Get a copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. You can get a copy of that book at emailrevealer.com, or you can get a copy of that book now. It's back up on Amazon.com. How to Become a Successful Private Investigator by Ed Opperman. And this book has been updated a little bit from the previous book that we had that was available to our wonderful listeners. Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. And if you like what you're hearing so far, don't forget there's a lot more in the members section. You can go to oppermanreport.com, and there's all kinds of exclusive content, shows that you won't find available on Friday night or Saturday night. There's also documents. We were discussing with our guest there about the Trump lawsuit. I got all those Trump lawsuit documents in there about this rape of this 13-year-old, Trump University. We have the D.C. Madam's phone records. As a matter of fact, too, I'm being sent all new information on the D.C. Madam's phone records that hasn't even made it up there yet. But we're here with Matt Demille. He's telling us about insider stuff from Hollywood, occult activity in Hollywood. And so, Matt, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, great. I thought I lost you. Okay. All right. Hey, you were talking about how some of these films are like a whitewash, this Presidio film, right? But are you familiar with the whitewash film that they did of the McMartin Preschool?
No.
With James Woods as the actor?
No, I haven't seen that one.
And it was produced by, what's his name, Oliver Stone?
I like Oliver Stone. I like James Woods. I can't believe I've missed this movie.
yeah. Well, look it up. It's called Indictment, the McMartin Preschool story, and you can find it online and watch it for free. And the people who actually wrote the script were part of that false memory syndrome group, the ones who actually got the McMartin family onto CBS that started that whole theory of satanic panic. And Woods also, too, was involved in 9/11.
Really?
Yeah.
How?
Okay.
How?
Yeah, James Woods, he's all over the place, man. James Woods was involved in 9/11. He was on a plane, I think it was like the week before, flying from Boston to New York or whatever it was. He was on that same flight. And he said that he saw some guys on the flight, Arabs, Middle Eastern people, who were rehearsing the hijacking. And he was sitting there watching this in first class, and he says, these guys are rehearsing a hijacking. And he went to the FBI and reported to the FBI a week before the 9/11 hijacking. That's what he claims.
Interesting. And, of course, the FBI did nothing.
Yeah. And he talks about this story all the time. Also, too, he used to attend the O.J. Simpson trial and go in the back and visit with Judge Ito.
Yeah. Again, people with forewarning.
Right, yeah. I love his movies. He's a great actor. I love all of his movies, just about every single one. He's a great actor, but he just seems to be so involved in all this.
Well, I can't comment on Woods, but again, it wouldn't surprise me if nothing. I had to walk away from Spielberg. I did, like I said, did my thesis on Indiana Jones, but I have to call the devil a devil, and whatever it turns out to be. Sad. Yeah.
Now you're saying too that you lived the Laurel Canyon scene. What can you tell us about that?
I didn't live in Laurel Canyon, but I sort of was haunted by it. This is more to do with the Doors specifically, but it does get into the Laurel Canyon territory. It's more to do with Venice Beach and that whole MK Ultra situation. I was a kind of a bloodhound to it. I gravitated towards it. Again, channeling things. I redesigned my apartment I never knew who Jim Morrison was. It was born, it was after my time, and I mean, it was before my time, and I was a Weird Al guy. I knew nothing about the 60s rock scene. And I go into LA and I design my apartment, spit an image more or less like Morrison's colorful doors, the doors to the beach. And my fiance and I went to Venice Beach, and I just gravitated to that house, knowing nothing about And then later on, lots of things to do with it. But Laurel Canyon, oh God, where to begin? Where do you want to start there?
Well, what can you tell us?
The MK Ultra story, your audience knows that's real. Again, this is back to working with people. I'm sorry, a lot of it is anecdotal, but that's a lot of what it was. You talk to people, then you go visit locations, you feel the energy. Again, more paranormal than conspiratorial, but that's what confirms it for me. For example, walking around Hollywood, I'll get back to Laurel Canyon in a sec, but going around Hollywood, visiting places, anywhere that I learned later, not at the time, didn't know, but learned later was designed to be a Masonic temple, I never entered inside. Just I'd get to the door and say, no, I'm not going inside for some reason, just a different energy. And Laurel Canyon was the same way. There were coincidences, people, places that just had that reverberation. So when I learned about it later, reading Dave McGowan and such, it was like reading my own life. The old tricks are still there, the spiking your drinks and, with drugs and things to try and hook you into these crowds. Did my first movie commentary on The Doors, which I, talk about Rothschild and all that. That same system of we're just going to, the people that will serve the establishment, we will give them the contracts. And, that's just how it's played. And I did have some friends older friends, not film students, but talked about working at the old studio, that legend of the CIA studio up there on the Hollywood Hills. You know which one I'm talking about?
Lookout Mountain?
Lookout Mountain, thank you. They said that was real, that they had done it. So it's just more confirmation. I mean, I don't have smoking gun documents, but I was just someone they didn't mind telling these things to.
Yeah, there's no doubt that it was real. Yeah, but now, did you ever tell you what they worked on up there?
I had heard that they staged the moon landings there, but I'm not sure that was the case. But they worked on everything up there, didn't they? I mean, they made more movies up there. Is there a specific one you're thinking of there? They made up.
One thing that always stuck in my head was this is way before I even heard of Dave McGowan or anything like that. In fact, the first time I had Dave McGowan on the show, this popped into my head. One thing was that I remember watching Johnny Carson, when Johnny Carson used to be on live. And when Bob Hope used to come on the show, and then Bob Hope was so cool that he would just pop on the show unannounced, and he would just leave early. So, I got to go, I'm busy. And on one of these episodes, Bob Hope had said to Johnny Carson, he says, oh, yeah, I'm filming over there at the canyon. And I think they even mentioned Lookout Mountain, and they talked about this for a couple of seconds. And Carson was familiar with this, and he goes, oh, you're involved in all that, too. You go up there and film up there and do all those films, huh? And they talked about it. And I've gone back. I've looked for this. I've tried to find it, and I can't find it anywhere. But they were talking about this on the Johnny Carson show. And you hear stories, too. I believe, too, that's where the porno film with Ronald Reagan was filmed. And you hear about Marilyn Monroe was up there filming as well. Now,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it all makes sense, right?
Doesn't surprise me in the least. The Reagan film there. I mean, if you're going to film it, that'd be a good place.
Yeah,
total illusion.
Other people have talked about this film, this Reagan film. And people talk about Reagan doing a porn film, but that it was a gay porn film is discussed as well. Even Alex Jones has talked about it. But the story is that Larry Flynt had this film in his possession, but may not any longer. Okay, and I've actually had people on the show that worked for Flynt. And then it came confirmed to me in another story through another source, but by the son. I don't want to mention the guy's name, but a famous guy's son, knows about this as well. But these guys you talked to, did they mention any kind of specific films or any kind of specific activity up there that they were involved in?
Oh no, not at Lookout. No.
Okay.
They just said it was basically that it was there. It was real. I didn't know enough at the time to ask them further. I wish I had known then what I know now. That sort of situation.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Now, what about, you mentioned briefly, I think before we came on the air, something about the 4 on the Floor murders, Wonderland. What do you know about that?
The which murders?
The Wonderland murders?
No, I was speaking at just Wonderland Avenue in general, just that, not the murders specifically.
Okay. Because you know that Scott Thornton was involved in those murders, right?
I'd heard, but I haven't researched it. I can't cover. I mean, I can't research everything with so many hours in the day. Scott Thornton, huh?
Yeah, Scott Thornton, the guy with the Liberace and Michael Jackson.
I was getting into Liberace the other day, studying, wondering where that was going to go. I guess there's the synchronicity of the day. Just again, small world, isn't it? Small world.
Just the world of Scott Thornton alone, because he wound up living over there with Dennis Hoff, the Bunny Ranch guy, and all his connections with the Heidi Fleiss. And what about, did you touch on any of that, these Hollywood madams?
No, it wasn't. I mean, like I said, I was aware that the child trafficking was there, but the serious hardcore sex trade, there was enough people making films about it. I just didn't have an interest, or I didn't see it, the forest for the trees, I guess. Maybe it was there and I didn't see it because it was so blurred into everything else. Everyone was doing a nude film every time you turn around. Juvenile students, we got a camera, let's get an actress nude. So it was probably there in a blur, but I didn't see it. Just those types of circles.
And have you heard rumors of famous stars being involved in sex tapes, and these sex tapes being circulated not to the public but in private?
Can't cite a specific case, but it just feels like that's what happens there. I mean, it's so weird. It's like when you're there, people will so casually talk about. I had people say, "Oh, well, friends can sleep with friends, right?" They just come up to you and, "Oh, you're not doing anything tomorrow. You want to come over and get drunk?" And da da da. And there's such a lazy, casual, we're not going to hold anyone accountable for anything bad attitude. I can't cite specifics, but I can imagine it can go on so easily. It's such an easy place to do the wrong thing.
Now, let me ask you a question. There's something
I seem to be thwarting you here. I'm sorry.
No, not at all. But something that's always struck me as kind of odd. There's definitely a reason for it being in this film. In the movie Pretty Woman.
Mm-hmm. With Julia Roberts, Pretty Woman.
Right, yeah, Julia Roberts and who's that guy? Richard Gere. There's funny, you laugh when I say that. But now...
Not a big fan of either one, so go ahead and say whatever you need.
Oh, okay. Well, before we get there, then tell us, why aren't you a big fan?
They've never done a lot of movies that I've liked, I guess. I was always into the hardcore fantasy adventure type of films, and Julia and Richard never did too many of those. I mean, I think he did First Night in '95, the Lancelot thing, but I'm looking for dragons and spaceships and things, and so they just hadn't done a lot of movies I liked. And I thought they could have found a better Tinkerbell and Hook. That's all. Yeah. I was a little partial to that. That's all. Nothing bad to say, but I'm sorry, I'm derailing you again there.
No, that's okay. But in that movie, Pretty Woman, have you ever noticed any kind of occult symbolism in that movie?
I haven't looked through it, but I might have to, because that's what I'm doing now with my commentaries, going back and rewatching and seeing what we never saw in plain sight. You'll have to cite the example to me, but I'd be happy to comment. I saw the movie once a long time ago.
In the last scene of the movie, he does that fire escape scene, right? Where he goes up the fire escape and she's in that window, and he asks her to marry him. It's like a kind of a Romeo and Juliet kind of a Rapunzel kind of theme, right? What I found out is that window and that fire escape, that building, was where the Black Dahlia, Elizabeth Short, lived in real life. Okay.
Well, yeah, okay, that's what they do. Like when Hitchcock went to Bodega Bay, he chose it because it was haunted for the birds. When they do their little rituals as well in these high energy, the energy is important. Whether it's a haunted location or ley line crossing or a ritual location. Yeah, so that makes perfect sense that they would do that in the Black Dahlia right there. And she's on fire. That's kind of like Beyonce and, her flaming transformation in the car wreck or whatever it was in her video. They do that. Julia Roberts' career took off after Pretty Woman, didn't it?
Yeah, and that's the ultimate chick flick. Every girl loves that movie, and then they watch it over and over and over again.
Yeah, it's not so much. People like to think that Hollywood is like the most talented actors and artisans who just happen through natural processes, through evolution, if you will, to create the best movies. No, it's which movies the producers, who are the control people, the occultists and money men, allow to be pushed, allow to go forward and promote, which ones they get behind and back and, push on every girl is now, impressed with Julia Roberts in 1990, and she has had her fiery transformation, and they control the minds of the youth. Very simple. Very simple alchemical process. A movie costs them nothing money-wise compared to their fortunes, and they control the minds of youth around the planet. We just always assumed they were just interested in giving us laughs and smiles and scares.
And they're making a fortune along the way, too. It's probably the most profitable industry to be involved in.
It doesn't hurt when you're above the line and you make the money and can have all the privileges of royalty that go with it. Not just the money, but having that money gives you the ability for the cops to look the other way, for the FBI and everyone else to look the other way. So you can get your little boys, or it's more little boys than little girls, but your child trafficking or your drugs of choice. And you can throw your parties and they'll never come and complain. The cops will never be called on the noise because they'll know who lives there. Yeah.
Yeah, we just had a guest on, Mike Rothmiller, who was part of the intelligence squad for LAPD, and he describes how Daryl Gates was CIA, and that they would, whenever they would bust these elite Hollywood people, they wouldn't make an arrest. They would use it for future blackmail purposes with them. Yeah.
Why waste it?
Right. And he even talks about how they were doing surveillance on people like Jerry Brown to see if he was homosexual, and even the Attorney General to find out if he was homosexual, just for blackmail was their focus for all these people.
Yeah, blackmail makes everything. It's like when a country invades another country now, they want to do an EMP or a bioweapon because that'll leave the wealth and the structures intact. They don't want to destroy it with a bomb. In Hollywood, why have a guy be arrested, and why have the studios lose all that promotional money? Why not just bribe the cops? It's a lot cheaper. And then they got blackmail. Everyone's got blackmail. It's in Pirates of the Caribbean when they're talking about currency is not the currency of the realm. Yeah, blackmail is the currency of the realm.
Yeah, it's so true. Now, what can you tell us about the worship of Aleister Crowley and all this?
Oh, the great Crowley. Again, this was the thing I didn't know anything about until I researched him later. I stepped into his legend. Are we near a break, or should I? This is short or long? This will be a long story, I think.
We got about 7 minutes, and we can take a break and then come back and finish up.
Oh, I think I can get through it in 7. My fiance liked to hike. I didn't because I'm a little snake phobic. Rattlesnake signs around Griffith Park will deter you. And but one day she got me hiking out in the Arroyo Socorro watershed runoff, which is in Pasadena, just north of the Rose Bowl. And this is the location of Devil's Gate, the portal I mentioned before. And this is where, back in the day, Crowley, L. Ron Hubbard, creator of Scientology, and Jack Parsons of Jack Parsons Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which is just north of this location. It's a straight line. Starting in the north, you have JPL, and just south of it is Devil's Gate. I mean, it's built pretty much on top of it. And then there's the watershed runoff, because it was a river they dammed up, and the Native Americans warned them not to, told them it was a gate to hell, basically. And that's where our modern rocketry comes from. And then you have the Rose Bowl just south of that. That little river that runs by the Rose Bowl comes from the Arroyo Socorro. And then you get to Suicide Bridge, which is the very filmed bridge on every TV show that the big lights and there's a fence alongside it so people can't jump off. They've had over 200 people jump to their deaths since 1913 when it was built. So there's this big negative energy flow off there. And I went hiking there, and I stood in the exact spot where Crowley, Hubbard, and Parsons back in the day did their Babylon working, summoning the demonic entity Lam through the Devil's Gate. I didn't know anything about this. Stood right there, had basically a possession or a walk-in or something. And I can say that calmly now because I've told the story a few times, but believe me, I wasn't comfortable telling it a year ago. And I became self-destructive for a period, wanting to throw myself off a height. And that contributed to the destruction of my relationship. I've spent a few years working that out, meaning working it out of my system. But Crowley ties to the Montauk project, which also ties to my thesis and my past. And I mentioned Back to the Future earlier, Doc Brown,
Yeah.
a.k.a. Werner von Braun of Paperclip and Disney. His house in Back to the Future, the exterior of Doc Brown's house, is right there in the right south of the Rose Bowl where the Devil's Gate runoff ends. And it's used to be a lodge, I believe, of the OTO, the Order Templi Ortis of Pasadena, Crowley's club. So I walked into that. And,
wait a second. You're saying that the house in Back to the Future was an OTO lodge?
Not. It wasn't a lodge specifically. I misspoke. It was a place where they would gather. The exterior, the interior was I think was a set, but the exterior where, and not all the exteriors. A little movie bit here. When you see it in Back to the Future 3, when Marty brings Doc home, I guess in the rain.
Yeah.
That's the exterior in Pasadena. The exterior you see in the beginning of Back to the Future, when Marty is late for school, the first film, is actually in a different location because the Burger King next to it. It's up in Burbank. But for some of the exteriors, they used a place that Crowley and Company used to hang out, and it is in the south end of that Arroyo Socorro, Pasadena, Devil's Gate stretch of things there. Very high energy, concentrated energy. And so when I came home after all this, learning all the other lore, I stumbled onto Crowley, and he just seems to, reading the Montauk books by Peter Moon, I'm familiar with those.
Yeah.
Crowley synchronously came up in so many things, including projects I had been working on my whole life. Just another thing channeled. Crowley haunts me. He really does. And I had the one time I was in England, I went up to Loch Ness, up to Scotland. Didn't know it, but I was in the shadow of his house, and that's when I turned around my trip and went home. And I think that burned down earlier this year, his house in Loch Ness. So the creepy tale of Crowley just seems to be everywhere of the things I touched in Hollywood and around in the occult. But he gets around too, so I guess that's not too coincidental. Crowley I've become somewhat fascinated with, including a few friends that had been big Crowley fans, and they didn't know anything about his Hollywood side. They had read his books, didn't know anything about his association with the military or any of these things. That just goes to show how double life, these people can be. And, the wickedest man on earth, right?
Yeah. Now, you were saying off the air, too, that you have some kind of connection to the Montauk Project?
Yes, a very strange connection. I'm not your typical... Montauk is not typical itself, of course, but my connection is... It may not be Montauk in all fairness, but 99% certain that's where the evidence points. I have to keep digging, but that's my working hypothesis. And that has to do with one thing I found in the books. Every day I was reading those books, every page had something synchronous with my life, whether it was referencing a friend I had in the past by name, like if you've known a person by this name in these circumstances, I'm like, well, I have, that sort of thing. And it talks about that in the books, how this principle of synchronicity brings you to these truths if it is indeed part of your life. But it also mentions a situation in Olympia, Washington in 1983, and this I mentioned Stranger Things earlier. Basically, it was a remote grab, and it had to do with my mom and her government job, and a very bizarre incident in 1983 where I vanished from school grounds. Vanished like I didn't wander off, I vanished. And I had 100 witnesses, and they were all searching for me. The police were called out. No one could find me. And then a few hours later, bam, I reappear right in the middle of all of them. And ever since, I've been trying to channel this Montauk chair my whole life. Like I said, I made it my thesis, Indiana Jones and the Throne of the Gods, a.k.a. Indiana Jones and the Montauk chair. And after 20-odd years of sculpting it and refining it, I come home and I study it, and I realize it was real. There's a lot of, I know we're running close to the break, there's a lot of just things in the Montauk story that match my life story that what the hell is going on here?
Now, you said your mother had a government job. What kind of job did your parents have?
My mom was my father was a firefighter, but my mom was secretary, and she got offered a job a legal secretary in the late 70s and early 80s. She had a couple offers where she was given the paper underwear offer. Don't come unless you're prepared to sell yourself, basically. And she said no, but you have to read the Montauk books. It says there's only one time in all of their taking of kids, and my DNA fits the profile perfectly. They did experiments in Olympia, Washington, now in 1983. Now, I vanished in the Montauk fashion in the spring of 1983, about 10 miles from Olympia, Washington. Well, my mom was involved in some of these, telling these, rich people and some military, no, go to hell, I won't prostitute myself.
A couple of questions. Now you say how you try and channel this Montauk. You don't have any concerns about doing it, like channeling and possibly inviting unwelcome spirits into your life?
I've already paid that price. I've got the scars for it. That's how I lost my fiance. I figure I'm already beat up. I'm more cautious now, but I'm not too timid because I'm in this I'm in this to win it, you might say. I've lost enough to where there's no going back to an old life. So I'm just going to see it through. And every once in a while, I just have to take some chances. I accept that. That sounds a little grim, I know, but that's the truth. It's not a pleasant story. Okay. It can be an interesting story and, even a fantastic story, but it's not necessarily a pleasant one. Yeah.
Oh, now, are you aware that Peter Moon is a fan of Crowley?
He writes about him and talks about. I see him on Facebook here and there with some reverence. I didn't think he was so much a fan, but just a researcher. He's in his work and.
No, he looks at Crowley in a positive light.
Whoa!
He told me.
I didn't know. I don't know why anyone would look at Crowley not like a respectful light, like I can respect the dedication he had, but like an admiring.
Yes, a lot of people do. A lot of people, admire Crowley and believe in his magic and and follow it and all that kind of stuff. I believe Peter Moon is one of those.
I can believe. I can respect Crowley, but I don't think I'd want to do any of the things he did.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that. Well, I cite Peter Moon and others just for the information. I take it and work with it my own way. As that's all any of us can do. But it sure helps to know that. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I hear you. And there's other people too that I like. And then Crowley comes up and he says, "Oh no, all that stuff about Crowley is he was just joking with you." Yeah, he's a brilliant man, and said, "Oh, it's just do no harm, and all that." It's hard to believe.
Well, see, that's the problem. Crowley did do harm.
Yeah.
If he said do no harm and actually followed that would be one thing, but harm was done. So, how do you judge that? I guess it would depend on who the harm is to. Then you get into that line where you cross the line, you can justify anything. I try and hold the line of honor, I guess. I'm not afraid of facing the supernatural as much, but I am afraid of breaking my own code. I don't want to make that internal fall. That's what'll weaken you, and that's how they get a hold of you.
Hey, what do you make of the theory that Barbara Bush is an offspring of Crowley?
I believe it. I can see it in the face.
Yeah.
So I've told people that myself. I always refer to our Transylvanian president from the Skull and Bones, Bush, with his Crowley illegitimate daughter, wife, or various combinations of those insults. We got vampires for presidents and Crowley offspring for our first ladies. Wonderful.
Yeah, you always got to wonder, why would George Bush, good-looking guy, bon vivant around the world, doing oil magnate, doing all that stuff, what would he marry that woman for? It's like his mother. Yeah. And there's pictures of the teenage Bush sons, the four horsemen, of the four sons.
Yeah.
This teenage pictures of them, man, they are the spitting image of Crowley, our young Crowley.
I didn't think of that, the four horsemen, the young Crowley, but I certainly Barbara, you can see it, and they all work together. I mean, I'm sure Bush is quite comfortable with such an evil, just like the Clintons. You know, they serve each other for the cartel. Who's using each other more? You got to wonder. You know, or is it just a mutual symbiotic relationship? Ugly.
Yeah, you know what?
The Illuminati. If there's some poster children for the Illuminati, there they go. There they are.
Yeah, as far as Clinton and Epstein go, you know, Epstein was a member of CFR and the Trilateral Commission. And it says in his own letter from his attorney wrote a 24-page letter. And Epstein says in this 24-page letter to the prosecutor that Epstein was part of the foundation of the Clinton Foundation. He was part of founding and creating the Clinton Foundation. Okay. I got that. I got that 24-page letter up on the website, the Opera Report, in the member section. Let's take a commercial break here. Okay.
Okay.
We're here with Matt Demille. Okay, Hollywood Insider Tells All, and you can find him on YouTube at Matt Demille, Demille. And we'll be right back after these messages. And now a word from our sponsors. Did you know that 30% of all people on online dating websites and personal ads are either married or in a monogamous relationship? 30%. If you suspect that your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend may be cheating online, go to emailrevealer.com and our online infidelity investigation. You give us their email address, and we could trace it back to online personal ads, dating sites, and social networks. We can even expand the investigation and find them cheating on escort service sites or even porn sites if they're registered to porn sites and swinger sites. So check out emailrevealer.com if you suspect your spouse is cheating, and check out our online infidelity investigation. William Ramsey is a producer here at the Opperman Report, and he's just come out with a new book, Children of the Beast, Aleister Crowley's Shadow Over Humanity. Now, he just sent me a copy of this book. Oh, boy, it's about 2 inches thick, and there's a chapter on just about everybody in this book that you can imagine. The Beatles, and Jack Parsons, everybody's in here. It's incredible. And I definitely recommend this book. There's a bunch of pictures in here, too, of all these people and different chapters and information. Anton LaVey and people I've never heard of, too. There's a whole bunch in here. JFC Fuller. I don't know who he is. But it's great stuff by our producer here, William Ramsey. So check out Children of the Beast, Aleister Crowley's Shadow Over Humanity. You can find it on Amazon.com, or you could find it in the Opperman Report.com bookstore. We have an urgent bulletin. It seems that the group Strawman is still on the loose. It has been confirmed that Strawman are Canadian, okay, and that authorities are asking people to stay indoors, lock your doors and windows until this group can be dealt with. You could find more information about this group of Canadians, at strawmanmusic.com. You can have your ad played here. Okay, we're looking for sponsors. Okay, in fact, we desperately need sponsors right now to take this show to the next level. So you can have your your ad played here, read live, like I'm doing now, so artfully. Or we can even work up a little jingle for you with some music and stuff like that and play it here. You have no idea how inexpensive it would be to have your ad played on the Opperman Report on 7 stations live Friday night and another 7 stations live on Saturday night, plus replayed every day of the week on different stations, and then archived on YouTube, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and all different kinds of podcasts, Pod This and Podbean, all different kinds of places who archive the show for us. And on those archives, your ad would play indefinitely, forever. You also get a little banner on OppermanReport.com. You get a mention on the air, you get a little interview on the air, and all kinds of fun stuff if you sponsor Opperman Report. We have an opportunity to get this show on a major AM/FM station in California. We've been approved. So if you want to sponsor us into that, so incredibly inexpensive that your ad would be heard by the range covers 5 million people in population where your ad would be broadcast, and all these other stations would be thrown in for free. So really affordable prices to sponsor OppermanReport.com. Get a copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. You can get a copy of that book at emailrevealer.com, or you can get a copy of that book now. It's back up on Amazon.com. How to Become a Successful Private Investigator by Ed Opperman. And this book has been updated a little bit from the previous book that we had that was available to our wonderful listeners. Oh, okay. Hey, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman, and this show is brought to you by SubashTechnosis.com. Go to SubashTechnosis.com and check out them on Facebook, too, at Subash Technosis LLC. So, Matt, you there?
I'm here.
Okay, great. Now, off the air, too, we had discussed that you've done some research into Tesla and time control, time travel.
Well, research, if you want to, into time travel, speculation, I guess I'd be more fair.
And what have you concluded?
Well, I mean, I can't claim to be a time traveler, but Tesla, always had a fascination with Tesla. Just one of those things I'm like, this is going to be important decades later. And then everyone got into Tesla.
Right.
Okay. And so I researched the basic timeline is Tesla, then the Philadelphia experiment, his stuff was used, his technology was used. And then most people think the trail stops at the Philadelphia experiment, but that's where the Montauk project resumes it. They basically continued the work later on. And it was another synchronicity for me to be into Tesla as like a hobby my whole life. And then later on to stumble into the Montauk project, and everyone else, all the researchers will say that Montauk is based on Tesla technology. It's just all things coming together. The electromagnetic matrix in which we live, I call it the biomatrix. It's, this electromagnetically based universe. As Tesla said, everything's frequency and vibration. That seems to hold true with quote-unquote time travel. I'm more a proponent of dimensional travel, where what we might perceive to be linear or literal time travel is more of a shifting of dimensional reality, more of the, neoing the matrix. And the Montauk chair being an amplifier, sort of a consciousness amplifier. We'll look at the Matrix. You plug in. It's another movie where Hollywood was basically telling us. And a lot of what I read in the Montauk books about the time travel was stuff I had put in my fictions, my games, my books, my movie scripts, and my movie sets. Channeling those fundamental principles, like now this is a slight diversion, but referring back to the 2 towers, the gateway.
Yeah,
we're finding, like with ancient alien sites all over the world, certain principles that seem to be consistent with these portals, these gates. And one of those coincidences was when I was talking to Ghostbusters designer DeCure about a set I had made in an independent film about the 2 towers, the 2 obelisks, and I had done the same thing. I had done a portal for a goddess to appear and disappear, and this wasn't in the script. I invented these 2 towers, and I got the basic measurements and proportions right. And I was led on to know that there are certain the sacred geometry principles, and that's back to that whole frequency thing. There's a consistency that the Hollywood elite know. The ancients, they know this. This is part of that hidden lore. And I've channeled bits of it. So when I was reading Montauk and getting into this more, I call it the 88 Stargate, or the it's so hard to verbalize. It's so hard to break down. It's like when you have the right symbols, the right focus of consciousness, you can shift certain subtlety in reality. It's like, you familiar with Star Trek?
Yeah.
Next Gen, the episode where Worf keeps changing between realities with slight differences.
No, I'm not familiar with the new version, just the old one when I was a kid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, basically just slight changes in the timeline, and you keep fine-tuning it. And symbols activate consciousness, and then when amplified with technology, which is, in my opinion, what UFOs are, is consciousness amplifiers. That's why they don't have a lot of moving parts. You just put your hands in the impressions, and it completes the circuit. And your consciousness sort of warps reality. And you can only do so much with the electrical capacity of a human brain and body, but you get a nice big UFO hooked up, you can do a lot. But then you can literally time travel. You can bend it enough. Is that making sense?
I've heard the theories, yeah. And now, do you think that the time travel is something that's available to anybody, or that there's just a few elite who have mastered this?
Well, that's I've heard a whole bunch of different things, and I'm not sure how they coexist. Someone's got to be full of it somewhere, I've heard about the jump rooms. I've heard about, literal time vehicles, and, I think if we had conventional time travel, they bring in that argument of the paradox that we'd be visiting ourselves, we'd see tourists from the future. I heard one person say that we had photos of 9/11 when we were building them. When we were putting the towers up, we had footage of them coming down.
Right.
So, but then you get in that duplication effect. How many Marty McFlys can be running around Hill Valley and so on? I don't think it quite works that way. I think everything in this reality is about consciousness. And really, it's all an illusion. So we can all have different variations of there's not one objective literal reality, ultimately. So there can be discrepancies and variations. Do the elites have this technology? I think so. I think they have it. They've misused it. And that's one of the reasons we're in the dark period we're in a post 9/11 world. I really think that we have messed things up in some way. We're in Back to the Future too. We're in Biff's dark reality or something like it. Something is wrong. And I don't doubt that the elites have played with technology. As was said in Indiana Jones, you're meddling with powers you cannot possibly comprehend.
In that second version, Biff is Trump.
he is indeed.
There's no doubt. Even the writers said Biff is Trump.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You can see it in the hair. I mean, it's there. But I don't know. I still want to hold out judgment on Trump for one reason, and it's more of a personal reason. Can I indulge for a minute here?
Sure. Yeah.
Back in the day, back when I was in film school and a little naive, and I had a lot of friends, they were all kind of worked up about the election at that time, and I told them why. They're all bought off. They're all answering to the money men. I didn't have the name at the time, but if I knew about Bilderberg, I would have mentioned them. But I had that mindset. It wasn't much of a shock to me later to learn about those things. And they didn't like me when I made a lot of enemies. And they did a lot of glass ceiling and career killing. And later on, of course, everything I told them, like, well, Obama, whether he intends or not, he's not going to close Gitmo. And he's not going to bring all the troops home in 18 months. Remember that? And they had no problem destroying my life over that. But in the end, I was correct. So Trump is really just kind of a personal thing for me, saying, I can pick the winning racehorse just to prove my point that I understand how the system works a little better. Not saying I'm always right, but basically saying they had no right to witch hunt me. That's all. In the end, if Trump is dirty, he's dirty. I'm just kind of curious to see. He's broken the system so far. Is he gone rogue from the big club? What's really going on? Is it a big scam? I guess we'll find out. And since I really don't have a dog in the fight in the end, I won't be voting. I'm just kind of supporting the renegade in this, the anomaly in the system is all. But in the end, I'd like him to be true to his word, but I'm a little bit more cynical than that. I'm curious to see. I'm learning a lot here tonight about, say, Epstein and such. The usual dirt wasn't there, but I don't know everything. I'm learning new stuff every day, so we'll see. And maybe he will be Biff. Maybe we can get that almanac and put things right,
Yeah. And how much of a rogue can he be, or a renegade can he be, with Roger Stone in there and Pat Buchanan and Paul Manafort? These are all the old Nixon guys.
Yeah, well, and again, I think Roger Stone has a tattoo of Nixon on his back.
He does, yeah.
Yeah. So, Mike, one of the YouTube videos I have, for all the praise I give to Trump, I have tough questions for him, and I list okay, can you really do this? And I list things like, can you land your plane at Area 51, like in Independence Day? Can you crash Bohemian Grove? I didn't mention it, but here's another one I would ask him. What are you going to do about chemtrails? What can you really do, Trump? You're proving that the system is rigged and the media is full of it. Okay, I like that because that vindicates me. What can you do beyond that? Or are you just is it going to be business as usual when what's going to happen there? I'm curious. Not too hopeful, but I'm curious. Certainly, I know we're doomed if it goes the other way, because we all know who Hillary works for. I mean, the globalist, she'll do everything the big club wants her to, happily. And that's not good for us little peasants.
I think, with the Clintons, we're in for a dictatorship,
she already dresses like one.
I know, it's just amazing. What is going on,
I mean, it's might be saying it's the less of two evils, but I don't know. Trump, to me, I was a fan of pro wrestling I don't care about golf. I hate golf, actually, like George Carlin does. I don't even have TV. I don't have a cable service. I don't even have a cell phone. I'm very much I don't watch reality shows. I do not care. There's not a lot of Trump that I like, but I did like back in the day. I was a fan of the WWF, and that's when I first became a fan of Jesse Ventura, and now that led to 9/11 research, with conspiracy theory. But Donald Trump hosted a few manias back in the day, so I'm like, well, if he's cool enough to give wrestling a chance, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But you got to perform, Donald. If you manage to avoid assassination or a magic plane crash, and you actually get that office, I'm afraid they're going to start World War III. Just to give him enough problems to deal with. I don't really have much hope beyond that. We'll see. The world is in a great, crazy time of change. We're no going back to the way it was, that's for sure.
Yeah. Now you're saying that they've destroyed your life. How have they destroyed your life, and for what reason?
Say again, I'm sorry?
You were saying how the elites or whatever have destroyed your life. How have they destroyed your life?
No, not the elites, my friends, who didn't want to hear what I had to say about conspiracies and things. They didn't want to believe anything. It was just that I was telling them at the time, they wanted me to get on their side politically, and I tried to make a point not to make any political sides. I wanted to be neutral. I just wanted to study UFOs and build Disneyland and do those fun things. I didn't care politically one way or the other. I didn't want to get involved. They forced it into a corner, and when I, on good conscience, just had to say, look, I know dirty money makes the world go round, and I can't blindly believe what this politician is saying. I'm sorry. Oh, they broke contracts. They cost me a lot of money, really did a lot of damage to my life. So it wasn't persecuted by the Illuminati. I'm not high on their list. I certainly ticked off a lot of people at school, some of them in the secret societies and such, that didn't like my thesis when I was exposing lots of stuff that I didn't know I was exposing, frankly. I channeled it, made it up, and they're like, "How dare this little snot show our secrets in his thesis?" I'm like, "What secrets?" Oh, oops. So I bothered people that way, and I did stumble onto some things like the one incident I told you about where looked the other way. And I was at a few parties where Dragnet with Dan Aykroyd when he arrests Christopher Plummer.
Yeah.
You know, that would be me, and I would get fired. You're relieved from duty. I at a few parties and hanging out at a few places on the Strip, I said things to people I shouldn't have said, and you won't work in this town. I was told that directly.
Let me ask you a question. Did that Dragnet movie, are you familiar with the Process Church of the Final Judgment?
Not by that name. Maybe the building is if it's in L.A.
No, the Process Church involved with the Son of Sam cult and the Manson family.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. See. Well, what do you think of that movie, that Dragnet movie?
Oh, that's one of the commentaries I did. Robert Boyle, the production designer, was one of my mentors, and he was 100 years old and still coming to class. Awesome, guy. It was a shocker for me. I saw it when I was 13 years old when it came out, and I thought, this can't be real. These evil cults. The world's better than that. Oh boy, was I naive. I like Joe Friday. I like Dan Aykroyd, and kind of a model for my youth. One reason I didn't drink until I was 32. But that movie, I learned, was only too real. And what we see now with the Baphomet bimbos, the Beyoncés and the Gagas and the Madonnas and their Saturnian single eye Illuminati awards all the time from the Oscars with their little triangle and all that. I'm sorry, I got on a rant there. I almost forgot where I was. Basically, yeah, it's real and it's sick. I'm not even a Christian, like I said, but even I will say that Hollywood is satanic.
Yeah, I believe that
they believe, and it's real because it's all about energy. Their willpower, their consciousness, they manifest it. It's real.
Yeah, that film, the pagans in that film is the Process Church, and the Flint Hefner character, right? Larry Flint, his bodyguards killed members of the Process Church. They went to prison for it. Yeah, Menser and killed Roy Radin, who was part of the Son of Sam cult in New York City. So there's all kinds of stuff in there, Revelations. What about ritual sacrifice, blood drinking? What do you know about that in Hollywood? We only got about 2 minutes, though. Sorry.
I didn't see it, but I heard about it. When I hear that there's when they refer to cutting the record and there's an altar,
right,
just capital. Yeah, I believe that. And the bloodletting, I believe in the energy. Again, my thesis being about Last Crusade was definitely all about the Rosalind Pillar, the DNA, the frequency, the focus. There is coding for the matrix in your blood. I mean, you can make that connection. I dare say midichlorians of Star Wars are to a degree realistic. Lucas knew what he was talking about, even if he didn't tell it very well. And they get a lot of energy like they do from child sacrifice. It's all about that state of mind. Again, consciousness, the terror of the innocent when they're killed. And it does resonate in the blood. They get power from this. I didn't believe that one. I was, again, like Indiana Jones. I don't believe in magic, a lot of superstitious hocus pocus, until I ran into it.
Matt, we're totally out of time. I'm sorry. I should have brought this topic up earlier. But thank you so much for coming on. Matt Demille. You could find him on YouTube. Matt, Demille. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.